Hi crafters, it's Kathy here from Scrap and Bean coming to you today. I'm going to do some heat embossing. So we'll do some embossing on cardstock, we'll do it on top of watercolor, and we'll do it on some chipboard even. And I've got a couple of different embossing powders out that we'll use, some typical gold, some holographic. Might have some other ones kicking around here, we'll just see how it works out. So I'm going to start off doing some of these watercolor backgrounds. This is just a really quick way to add a splash of color onto your projects. These happen to be some winter, or you could even use them as Christmas cards. Starting off with, I happen to be using watercolor paper because I know I'm going to get it quite wet. And I'm using this aqua brush, which has a paintbrush tip on it. And the barrel of the pen is empty. You just unscrew this, you fill it with water, and now you have your source of water for your watercoloring. So you don't need to have a cup of water that might tip over on you. That's my whole source there. If I get a little bit too wet, or I need to dry it off, or I need to take a color off of it, I've got my paper towel I can wipe it out onto. And for watercolors, I'm using these Peerless transparent watercolors. Have all of these different colors. They're called dry sheets. They're unique in that it's compact. Look how many different colors I can have with me. I've got lots here. So if I'm even going like on a road trip and I want to take art supplies with me, this is a good one to take because look at all the colors I have. I've got my aqua brush, a little bit of watercolor paper, and I'm set. That's all I need. So today I'm going to be using these two colors. So the way these dry sheets work is this gives you a sample of what your color is going to be. On the opposite side, this is the actual pigment that we're going to use. So on this one, it's called Tea Rose Pink. It's kind of this watermelon type color. And then this is the actual pigment. And you can see here where I've picked up some pigment and used it already. So I'll show you how that works. So this happens to be watercolor paper. And I'm just going to squeeze my aqua pen brush here and just I got a lot of water down there, maybe a little bit too much. So now I'm going to pick up my pigment and just brush it on. If I want to take this color off of my brush, you can see where I've got it on there, and there, now my tip is clean again. So if I want to pick up some of this other color, and then I would just let that air dry, but because that's takes too long when we're doing this, I will take a heat gun to it. And if you wanted to make it even more vibrant, you could put another layer on it, right? So there's adding even some more vibrancy, adding more pigment to it. So just pick up pigment off your card and brush it on. Maybe I should have taken the color a little over to the side there. So I'll just set that side to dry. Here's another one. Now I've got water or a color on my tip, but I'm okay with that. If I don't want it there, I can just wipe it off on my paper towel. And because I want to get this fresh piece of watercolor paper, I want to put down a wet base. So I'm putting a little bit of color on there at the same time. Just kind of taking the pigment that's on my brush already. Pick up the pigment off my cardstock, or off my dry sheet there, and spread it on. So it's just like using your pans of watercolor, except that the pigment is all on this dry sheet. So it's just really nice and compact. So that's all I'm doing, is just scribbling around some water. It's kind of almost addictive. Like you really can't go wrong with this, right? You're just scribbling. Oh, and there I didn't even make it wet first, and it's just working. It's very, very forgiving, because, you know, how can you go wrong when you're just scribbling color around. And then I've done some of these ahead of time, and see what happens. Can I? Yeah. So I'm just putting a little splatter of the same color of paint. It's just kind of a stronger pigment there. I wanted some dots where it's white, so I'm not getting total white cardstock right to the end. Do I have it too wet? Okay, and then I'm just going to let that set aside to dry. And then my dry sheets, they'll have a little bit of moisture on there. So I just let those air dry, and then I stack them up again and put them away. This, I'll just take my pigment out of there I'm kind of squeezing the base so that extra water is coming out, and it's washing that paint right off the tip of my brush. So you can see even when it's a really vibrant color of pigment, it's coming right off the end, and now I've got a clean brush to work with on another color. So I've actually done this on quite a few different colors ahead of time, and I splattered. There's some blues, some purples. I did do some pinks. So I was basically just having fun, spreading around. There I did a little bit of a kind of a corally orange color with it. Lots of colors to choose and work from. So just was having some fun. And then I decided this is what I would do with them. So my next step would take these ones that are actually nice and dry, and I wanted to, next thing will be some embossing. I guess that's what we'll do, is embossing some sentiments on it. So I have pulled out this stamp set from Penny Black. It's called Merry Up. And it's got a whole bunch of different sentiments on there to do with winter and snowmen and Christmas and hot chocolate. And some of them are individual ones, like you can just put greetings of the season, or season's greetings, or jolly holidays. I've used that one quite a bit. Well, you can see the ones I've put some stays on ink on there. And then there's some where you can combine them. So this has like from our home to yours. And so you can put on here warm hugs from our home to yours, or joyful wishes from our home to yours. And there's also to you and yours, or warmest wishes to you and yours. So you can combine, and you get a lot of different combinations out of this. So I'm really enjoying that stamp set. So I'm using that for this project, and I've put one of them in, I think Winter Wishes is what it says. Yeah. Onto my stamp platform, and I will just put one of my pieces in here. I like using any kind of stamp positioner that you have. If you're going to doing a lot, like if you have a stack and you want to do them all the same sentiment, this just makes it quicker. Now, is this going to line up where I want it? Not really. So I would say probably about there. Looks like the middle. And I'm going to be using gold embossing powder. So I'm going to stamp this using a clear Watermark ink. You could use Emboss It as well. It's any kind of a pigment ink. Doing this in gold, I would typically, because I'm going to emboss it in gold, I would typically even use a pigment gold pad. Just so that if it doesn't emboss 100%, when you see through the embossing powder, you're still seeing gold, so it's not that noticeable. But anyways, this is what I have, so that's what I'm going to use. Just going to stamp that here. And then close my lid and make a little impression with that stamp there. Now I am going to put down a piece of paper. I forgot a step. I didn't use my little embossing pouch. Now, which side did I emboss on? It's hard to see. Anyways, we'll dump powder on there and then we'll tell, ah, that was the side. And now I'm going to heat that up. Well, I'll put this powder away before I get my heat gun out. And we'll see if that shows up on camera. Right now it just looks like a dull powder, but you see where it goes shiny? So you can tell where it's melting. Awesome. Now I want to show you close up because I forgot a step. Normally I take this little pouch and wipe it across my surface first, but because I didn't, you might be able to see on camera. So there's some little stray gold flakes in here. And that's what happens, or can happen, but this is what prevents that. So we'll do another one. Luckily, I just happen to have a stack of them here. But first, I'm just going to take this, it's just an anti-static pouch, and I just wipe it over the whole thing. You can either see nothing on there, like as if nothing happened, or you might be able to see a very, very fine powder across the surface, and that's fine. That is just making it so that there's no static and that this really fine embossing powder doesn't cling to the background of your paper where you might not want it. No, that's not going to be lined up here on this one. I keep using different size papers, so then my little sentiment isn't fitting the same. There, that'll work. And now we do the same method we did before, except that I've added my little pouch on there. And hopefully this turns out perfect so I can show you the difference. Because you know what? Sometimes when you're sharing your things, it doesn't work out the way you want it to. But we're going to hope that this works perfectly. And I'm just putting, this is just a piece of printer paper I put down so that it captures my powder so I can be really generous. Get it all on there. I like to give it a little flick to get off any little stray powders. Now, if you were doing a lot of these, in fact, maybe I should do that. So once you have the powder on there, you don't have to heat it like right away. It's not like an emergency. You could actually go in and, is this going to be off camera? Maybe not. I could do this to several of them and then heat them all at once. Yeah, my little thing here. I should have used all the same size papers, and then I wouldn't need to quit to keep moving my sentiment. I almost forgot again. You guys got to catch me. Too bad there isn't a way that you can say, hey Kathy, you forgot a step. So ink that up again with just my VersaFine ink. Stamp it down. Let it have some good contact with the paper. Now, which end did I put that on? I can't even see it. That end, okay. Oh my goodness. Give it a good flick to get off the extra, and there, I've got two ready to heat. So if I wasn't doing this on video, I would do them all and just line them up and then heat it all at once. If you're doing a lot of cards, it's pretty efficient to just do them assembly line. There we go. So we got a little sentiment on there. And I wanted to add a little bit more gold to it, kind of like I did on there. So I have, you know, when you want to add some color, you just look through your supplies, see what kind of mediums you have that's the color you want, and check out if that'll work. So I am using this Derwee ink that happens to be gold, and it's got some sparkle to it, which is really nice. You could use a gold paint. I like this because it It's got that sparkle in there. And I do need a paintbrush. We'll grab one here. Sorry, should have had this. Should have been thinking and had this prepped. So that I don't knock over my whole jar, I'm going to pour a little bit and just work out of the cap. So get some on my brush there, and I'm just going to sprinkle it. I don't know if that's going to show up on camera because we're pretty far away from the lens. My camera I've normally been using for these Tuesday videos, it is just not talking to my computer today, so I actually videoed this once already, or at least some of the steps, and there was just no way for me to get it uploaded, so unfortunate. Oh, that goes better. Okay, get lots on there, Kathy. So I'm just adding a little bit of gold on there to add some sprinkle. If you want it to look more like snow, you could add some white specks on there. And the other thing I was going to do, I did on some of these, I was just kind of experimenting to see what would happen. And unfortunately, that filming didn't work. But now that I know that it kind of works, I can show you what I did. So take some out of here. It's not enough in there anymore. Just spread that on my craft mat. And this stuff you do need to shake up so that the little sparkle doesn't all settle on the bottom. And I just experimented. I wondered what would happen if I just dipped my card in there, right? So that I could edge the rim of it with gold. I mean, you could probably do this too. I never actually thought of that. But that's like, I guess that works. So you could do that too. But here's what I was doing. I just made a puddle out of gold and then run my cardstock through there. But what I did find, oh yeah, okay, so here's something you shouldn't do. All those little splatters of gold on there, they're wet, and now I'm putting my finger all over them, so they're smearing. So I just need to put these little gold speckled ones aside, and we'll work on one that doesn't have wet on it. Okay, and I was just going to warn you to don't do what I did. And now I just do another little screw up. Okay, so one of the benefits of watching these Tuesday videos is you can find out what not to do as well. Okay, so I made my little puddle, and then I just run my cardstock through there, and you can see I get a little gold edge, and it's nice and irregular. I love that. So of course I just kept going to all four sides, and then I realized that when you do all four sides, you tend to put your fingers in them. So sometimes it's better to just do, two sides, so you've got some place to hang on to it. There we go. So I just kind of mop up my ink with those sides of the cardstock there, and I like that effect. It's just giving me just a little thin layer of gold on there. So, and you can kind of control to a certain extent how much gold you're getting on there. So we'll do this one here. If I do it perfectly straight up and down, I get a little bit. I'll get a little bit on the front and a little bit on the back. A little bit on the edge. But instead of holding it straight up and down, if I put it at an angle, so I'm getting more of this front surface is in contact with it, you get a little bit wider area of gold. So you can start off with it upright and then lean it over until you get to the effect, the angle where you're getting the effect that you like. So I kind of like it like that. Take the rest of that out of my brush and put it onto my cards. Just kind of mop up the extra of that, and then I'm going to lay that aside to dry. The other thing I did, and unfortunately I only have 2 of these, and that part of the filming just is not accessible anymore. Equipment fail. But you know what? We can just do it to some other snowflakes. So basically what I did was take some, these are just chipboard, and I painted them white, and then I put some heat embossing on them. So can we do that? Yes, we can. We can do anything we want. I've got supplies here. So we'll do something similar to that. So these are the Southern Ridge chipboard snowflakes that I was using. This particular snowflake design, we have lots of different chipboard sizes and designs for snowflakes. This particular one comes with these 6 large ones together. And I need my paintbrush again, but not with gold on it anymore. So let's dry that off. This particular idea, I wanted to paint them white first. So I happen to be using Fresco chalk paint called Snowflake because I love chalk paints. But any white paint that you have is going to work. If you have white gesso, that'll work too. We're just finding a way to make our chipboard white. So I'm just painting that on there. Depending on your paint, how pigmented it is, whether it's opaque or translucent, you might want to do a second coat. Totally up to you. No need to gesso your chipboard first. You can just go right in with paint. If you happen to have white gesso, you can just use that to make white chipboard. You don't even have to paint over it. You can just leave it with a coat of paint on there. I use chipboard a lot in my projects, in my scrapbooking, and more in my card making as well. One of the things I really like about the chipboard, for one thing, it's a Canadian product, and so that's always really nice. But I do love working with chipboard because you can customize it to really any color that you want. So if I was putting a piece of chipboard on, say, a scrapbook layout, and I need it to be, I don't know, say bright red, I just look through my craft room cupboard until I find some kind of medium that's the red color I want, and that's what I put on my chipboard. You can put sprays, you can put paints, you could put ink. Just, it's like you can put anything on there. So you just find what you have that's the color you want, and that's what you use. And this, I'm kind of going over it with a second layer of white, just so that it's nice and solid. Oh, I got something on there. And there we go. And this is going to dry really fast because it's chalk paint, and that's one of its characteristics, is that it dries quickly. If you are using a paint that doesn't dry so quick, you can heat set it. It's fine to heat set on your chipboard, or you can let it air dry, or you could blow it dry, I suppose. Like, that would be kind of silly. But any method you want to dry it is going to work. I'm going to need a pair of scissors because I'm going to take this out of here. If I was doing these without demoing it on the camera, I guess, I would just do all my snowflakes at the same time for my project. So that's always a possibility. And then when you cut them out, sometimes you have these little nibs on there. You just snip them off. I mean, I'm even using my good fussy cutting paper scissors, but the chipboard is you know, it's just really easy to go through, so you don't have to worry about damaging your scissors. Just get those little nibs all the way off. And then what I want to do is add some sparkle the way that I have on here now. Hopefully this shows up on camera. I just had a notice about my battery, so I'm hoping this is actually filming. On here, if I tilt it, you can see there's some sparkle just in this area and this area. So what I did was use this holographic embossing powder and put it just in those particular areas. So I'm going to try and show you that on this because I used up all these designs. So I'm going to go back to my little piece of paper here. And now to get it in just some areas, if I use this like I did before, it's going to cover my whole thing, and I'm going to have embossing powder over it all. If that's what you want, then that's a great way to do it. What I did on here, because I wanted to go into these little areas, I used this Versamark, which is the same fluid, same medium that's in the pad, but now it's in the form of a pen. And it's got two tips on it, really fine tip. So you could actually write with it if you wanted and then emboss it. Or there's this more like a brush tip on there. So depending on how small the design is that you want to go into, I'm just going to say let's do this little area here. We'll put sparkles. I'm not going to put sparkles over the whole piece of chipboard. I'm just going to zero in on an area, and maybe we'll do a little bit, not the whole tip, but just a little bit to add that hint of glitter on the edges. And then be generous to that. Little piece here I didn't get. Now here's something. Oh, okay, it worked anyways. I won't tell you what not to do because it worked. Okay, so what I was gonna say is if your paint has any moisture to it, then your embossing powder could stick to the paint and then my whole thing would end up glitter. But my paint is dry enough that it just stuck to these areas. You might be able to see a little bit of sparkle. Right now it's kind of dull because it needs to be heat set. It needs to be heat set to get it to stay on there permanently. And it also sparkles more once you have heated it up. So we'll get out the heat gun again. And hold it in a manner that you're not going to burn your fingers. And oh, I hope you can see that on camera. It is really, as soon as you heat it, like it's melting, the embossing powder is melting, the sparkle just really comes to life. That is so fun. It doesn't matter how many years I have been doing heat embossing, I still am thrilled by that magic of what happens when you heat it. It's just so fun. So there, hopefully you can see on there the effect of just adding that sparkle to a portion of it. So you can do that. You could do like half of it. You can, any area, you can just zero in on the areas that you want to add your sparkle. So that's another way to heat emboss. The other thing I did to these cards here is I actually used this, back to this Darwin ink that I had going anyways. And see if I can dry off my paintbrush. And I like to work out of the lid just in case I spill, then it's only a lid's worth I'm spilling. Now this, I'm just taking my raw chipboard. So I haven't done anything to it. I have a little piece hanging in there I gotta poke out. And the center of this chipboard design, it actually has a little piece that you can punch out if you want. On this one, I left it in. On this snowflake, I punched it out and then I put my little twine through there. So you can have it either way you want. And here I'm just putting this nice gold sparkle ink on there. So that's going to match some of my edge on here. Just adding some more gold for my project. So once I have my supplies out for a project, I just like to figure out multiple ways I can use the same stuff, right? And as I mentioned, you can really use anything on chipboard. As you can see, like this is a super fluid ink. It's super runny. It's maybe almost like water, except that it's got a nice sparkle and a nice color to it. And here it just is perfect on chipboard. Now a little bit of it might be soaking in, but I am certainly getting that gold color and lots of sparkle on there. So awesome. Okay, it's So that's just another way that you can use your Darwin ink or any kind of gold ink that you have. Then just to speed this up a little bit, I'm going to heat that or help it along in its heating. And I actually like the smell of that Darwin ink when it heats. Okay, a little bit crazy. But I'm going to put this holographic, whoa, just about open the lid. I'm going to put some of that on here as well. I'm going to use my Versamark pen and use the wide tip. And I'll just put a line of it on each little spike of the snowflake here. Oh, I might as well put the rest back in the jar, right? And then I can heat set that embossing powder. Now I would suggest that you don't hold it with your hands when it's this small, but like use tweezers or clip it into the end of a clipboard, something just where you're not going to burn your fingers, because it does get very, very hot. And hopefully you can see that super sparkle on there. Love it. So then that's going to be ready for another project. So I hope you do get out your embossing powders, or if you don't have any, that you're interested in playing with them now. So what we use today, just for a recap, the dry sheets, if you're looking for them on our website, look under this word Peerless with the double E's. The chipboards, Southern Ridge chipboard, we're using this Darwin ink in gold. We use some gold embossing powder, used holographic embossing powder. This one happens to be by Ranger, but Stampendous makes one. There's a few different brands that make holographic. And I think we carry, at least 2 of them. A little bit of white paint. And that's all it takes, and you've got yourself, you just start layering your snowflake on top of your patch of color, on top of white cardstock. You can emboss on the white cardstock your sentiment, or you can do it right onto your color. And you've got yourself some really quick winter cards. So have fun.